There are a lot of mistakes I see people make when they're negotiating. I think one of the most obvious is when people give ranges. When it's sort of a buy-sell transaction, if you say, I'd be willing to pay between 100 and 125, all somebody hears is 125. So it leaves the person reading it to potentially read into things that aren't there, and it can create confusion. And listen more than you talk, because oftentimes, especially when you're a little bit more laid back and a little bit more quiet, people will speak, especially in a tense circumstance, they'll speak to fill the vacuum. People don't like silence, and they'll often reveal something about their position or what they're looking for that can be useful information. You know, negotiation, it's not always super transactional. Sometimes if you're buying a used car, it's purely about getting the best deal, but so many negotiations lead to a partnership or the potential for subsequent partnerships or subsequent opportunities to work together. I think in those circumstances, you really want to be cognizant. You really want to be cognizant of trying to have a positive outcome for everyone. And even if it's more positive for you, there's not a lot of upside in letting the other person know you feel that way. Thinking about negotiation as oftentimes the beginning of a longer relationship can be helpful in terms of how you deal with a dynamic through the negotiation.
Biden's infrastructure plan is a big plan. It is in the granular details. Joining us now is one of the most influential members of that body, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Congresswoman, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for making time to be here tonight.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So, as I know, you saw the president's speech today, and we've all been reading about and learning about what the president is asking for in this American Jobs Plan. What do you think of it?
You know, I think that the vision that President Biden and the administration has laid out, you're right, has surprised a lot of us in a positive way. And in the detail and the thought that's here, the scope of it is really encouraging, except I think the how. That 2.2 trillion, 2.25 over 8 years, I have serious concerns that it's not enough to realize the very inspiring vision that Biden has advanced. And so I believe that those of us here, especially as progressives, especially Party, we know that there is so much more opportunity here. And in order for us to realize this inspiring vision, we need to go way higher. We need to go so much, realize the very inspiring vision that Biden has advanced. And so I believe that those of us here, especially as progressives, especially Party, we know that there is so much more opportunity here. And in order for us to realize this inspiring vision, we need to go way higher. And that's what's going to help us actually deliver on this really promising and inspiring vision that the president has laid out today.
And when you say that it should be bigger, do you want the numbers?
your intention to be a daughter, that you were not going to play a role in the administration. What changed your mind?
When I spoke to 60 Minutes, it was, I think, 5 or 6 days following the election, and I was processing real time the new reality and what it would mean. I realized that having one foot in and one foot out wouldn't work. And the reality is it all happened very organically for me. I had to determine that my husband and I would both want to be in DC, that it was viable to move our children, that they would be happy in their new environment. After I decided I wanted to try, I needed to divest of numerous businesses. So did my husband. And I wanted to understand where I could be an asset to the administration, how I could help my father and ultimately the country.
What will you be doing?
I think for me, what it means is that I'll continue the advocacy work that I was doing in the private sector, advocating for the economic empowerment of women. I'm very focused on the role of education. I'm still my father's daughter. So to me, this particular title was about giving critics the comfort that I'm holding myself to that highest ethical standard. But I'll weigh in with my father on the issues I feel strongly about.
You say that you are your father's daughter, and we all get that. You also talk about the critics, and you have a couple that say, why isn't Ivanka speaking out? Where is she on Planned Parenthood? Where is she on gay rights? Where is she on the rights of women? Where is she on climate change? And it's like you're being held personally accountable for not speaking up. What do you say to your critics?
I would say not to conflate lack of public denouncement with silence. I think there are multiple ways to have your voice heard. In some case, it's through protest and it's through going on the nightly news and talking about or denouncing every issue in which you disagree with. Other times, it is quietly and directly and candidly. Quietly and directly and candidly. So where I disagree with my father, he knows it, and I express myself with total candor. Where I agree, I fully lean in and support the agenda and hope that I can be an asset to him.
Conservation bill in at least the last half a century. The president's daughter celebrated the bill's importance here in Colorado.
To celebrate our national parks.
With about who established the national park system.
He preserved the last 100 years, but we need to preserve 100 years and beyond.
As is often the case with the president, his record on conservation a bit more complicated. His nominee for the Bureau of Land Management even supports the sale of some public lands. Trump's embrace of conservation an indication of the growing importance of environmental issues. But the economy still the top issue, and Ivanka Trump says single moms among the most in need.
The vast majority of them are unlikely to work in industries that enable them to telecommute or work remotely. So how do they maintain their attachment to the workforce if their children aren't in school or aren't in safe housing?
I just wanna see the light.
If I'm in the club, I get 100 stacks. I'm always rolling up so I can laugh at that. Them niggas stole my swag, but I don't want
it. I'm gonna be the bad guy, which I'm sure half the room would agree with anyway. And I want to get away with as much bad things as possible, ideally to enrich myself and advance my interests, even if that means putting my interests ahead of the American people. So, Mrs. Hobart Flynn. Oh, and by the way, I have enlisted all of you as my co-conspirators. So you're gonna help me legally get away with all of this. So, Mrs. Hobart Flynn, I want to run. If I want to run a campaign that is entirely funded by corporate political action committees, is there anything that legally prevents me from doing that?
No.
Okay, so there's nothing stopping me from being entirely funded by corporate PACs, say from the fossil fuel industry, the healthcare industry, big pharma. I'm entirely 100% lobbyist PAC funded. Okay, so let's say I'm a really, really bad guy, and let's say I have some skeletons in my closet that I need to cover up so that I can get elected. Mr. Smith, is it true that you wrote this article, this opinion piece for the Washington Post entitled, "These payments to women were unseemly, that doesn't mean they were illegal"?
Well, I can't see the piece, but I wrote a piece under that headline in the Post, so I assume that's right.
Okay, great. So, green light for hush money. I can do all sorts of terrible things. It's totally legal right now for me to pay people off. And that is considered speech. That money is considered speech. So I use my special interest dark money funded campaign to pay off folks that I need to pay off and get elected. So now I'm elected, now I'm in. I've got the power to draft, lobby, and shape the laws that govern the United States of America. Fabulous. Now, is there any hard limit that I have? Perhaps Mrs. Hobart Flynn, is there any hard limit that I have in terms of what legislation I'm allowed to touch? Are there any limits on the laws that I can write or influence, especially if I'm based on the special interest funds that I accepted to finance my campaign and get me elected in the first place?
There's no limit.
So there's none. So I can be totally funded by oil and gas. I can be totally funded by Big Pharma. Come in, write Big Pharma laws, and there's no limits to that whatsoever.
That's right.
Okay, so awesome. Now, Mr. Mirabani, the last thing I want to do is get rich with as little work possible. That's really what I'm trying to do as the bad guy, right? So is there anything preventing me from holding stocks, say, in an oil or gas company, and then writing laws to deregulate that industry and cause, that could potentially cause the stock value to soar and accrue a lot of money in that time?
You could do that.
So I could do that. I could do that now with the way our current laws are set up. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so my last question is, or one of my last questions, I guess I'd say, is it possible that any elements of this story apply to our current government and our current public servants right now?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have a system that is fundamentally broken. We have these influences existing in this body, which means that these influences are here in this committee shaping the questions that are being asked of you all right now. Would you say that that's correct, Mr. Mirabani or Mr. Schaub?
Yes.
All right, so one last thing, Mr. Schaub. In relation to congressional oversight that we have, the limits that are placed on me as a congresswoman, compared to the executive branch and compared to, say, the President of the United States, would you say that Congress has the same sort of standard of accountability? Is there more teeth in that regulation in Congress on the president, or would you say it's about even, or more so on the federal?
In terms of laws that apply to the president, yeah, there's just almost no laws at all that apply to the president.
So I'm being held, and every person in this body is being held to a higher ethical standard than the President of the United States.
That's right, because there are some ethics committee rules that apply to you.
And it's already super legal, as we've seen, for me to be a pretty bad guy. So it's even easier for the President of the United States to be one, I would assume.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
and this comes from Erin Murray Manning out there. Thank you, Erin, for this question. Ivanka, do you have any daily routines or life hacks that help you organize your life? What's your best life hack?
Well, I think organization is critical. So that part of the question is absolutely critical. And I think about my schedule, and people talk about balance and finding balance, but in and of itself, balance implies a scale which never stays in balance for very long. So rather, I try to make sure that my life is generally architected around the priorities that I've set for myself. And I try instead to be reflective of, was I in the right place at the right time? Was I with my kids when they needed me? Was I working on the deal that I needed to be working on at the right time? So, I think just making sure to constantly reflect on that and making sure that your day lines up. And I ask myself that question every week.
What do you do though? Give me a practical organization tool.
In terms of my life, I've decided my priorities, always family. I mean, always my children come first to me. That doesn't mean that I'm not incredibly focused and driven and ambitious in a professional capacity, but my husband and my children and my family are always my top priority. So I ensure that I have my mornings with them. It's very unusual to not have a morning with them, and my evenings with them. So I come home, I make sure my last meeting's at 5:30, which gives me around half an hour to 45 minutes to return phone calls that I was unable to return given a hectic day, clear my plate a little bit, walk down the hall, go into people's offices and chat to follow up on things, and then I race home. I live a couple of blocks away. I get home, we do dinner together, I do bath time, I do books. By 7:30, 7:45, now with Arabella, she's pushing me, so she's moving me into the 8s, but I try to have both kids asleep, and that's a time that then I connect with my husband, we go to dinners, oftentimes we have work commitments during the week, and then unfortunately, I'm back to work at 11 o'clock at night, but that's, for the flexibility of leaving the office at 6, it means I have to catch up somewhere. So it means sleep is something that at this point in my life, as much as I recognize the importance of, is the area that's probably suffered the most.
What's your average hours?
Not much. I mean, I probably, and it's not something I'm proud of. In an ideal world, I'd love, it's actually not that healthy, but to be able to accommodate my
What's your
top priorities, 5 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. So, I come back, and oftentimes from 11 until who knows when, I'm catching up. Mm-hmm. So I really try to do in the office the things that I can only do in the office, which is meetings, which is interfacing with people, and then the things that I can respond to on my own time, I do so at the end of the day, which tend to be emails. I also think weekends are incredibly important to me. So unless I have a wedding or something I truly can't get out of, I will not schedule things on the weekends. Friday, I cook family dinners. We all come together. Until Saturday night, we don't take any commitments. That's our time to sort of reconnect. We play board games. We go for walks in the park. We're just together. And then Sunday as well. So it's very rare that I'll take on a commitment, a personal commitment or otherwise during the weekend.
So Ivanka, what is the best business building advice that you learned growing up? And what is the best new piece of business building advice that you acquired running your own business?
Well, I think on a basic level, to succeed in any business, you have to be deeply passionate about it. You really have to find what it is that you want to spring out of bed to do. Not every morning you spring.
Is that what you learned as a child?
I did, and it was something that my parents really instilled in me. They challenged me many, many times to the point where it made me a bit self-conscious about whether they thought I was capable. I was at Wharton School of Finance. Why do you keep asking me if I'm going to go into real estate? I'm majoring in it. But they really challenged me to ensure.
Really?
Yeah, no, it made me a little nervous. But they did it with my brothers as well. They really wanted to make sure that we were doing things out of passion and out of love rather than out of obligation. Because I look around and I have the great fortune of having grown up and now increasingly being surrounded by people that are playing at the highest level in their field across many, many different industries. And that's something they all share. Nobody's phoning it in. And the people who start to do that slowly recede, and that may be okay. They may be at a different point in their lives where their goals are less ambitious, but you don't build an impactful business by not being deeply passionate about it. So I think on a basic level, I always tell young people, you really should use the years when you're in high school, college, your early years out of college, to just try a lot of different things and find what it is that you really enjoy doing and can envision doing for the rest of your lives.
If you have time for one quick question, Constance, Mitch McConnell filed for a procedural vote on your Green New Deal resolution. I'm just wondering if you have a thought on that, if you think it's ready.
I look forward to us having a real vote and not just a procedural vote.
And then, if you have time for one more, the AFL-CIO sent you and Senator Markey a letter that said that they consider some of the provisions in the Green New Deal a threat to their workers. What do you say to that?
Well, if I recall correctly, the head of the AFL-CIO, Mr. Trump, did not sign that letter. And so I don't know if it's an official position, but what I do know is that the Green New Deal is all about mass investment in infrastructure and jobs, particularly we're talking about steel workers, electrical workers. There's there's so much work to do in transitioning to 100% renewable energy, and we have to do that work with union labor. We have to do that work with by reinvigorating our entire workforce. So by reinvigorating our entire workforce, so creating our
but just everybody gets asked about the Green New Deal.
Well, I mean, it's...
Das, was ich will.